The original LEGO Star Wars remains one of my favorite Star Wars games of all time. It was an insanely charming take on the Star Wars universe, and as a kid, it showcased my favorite movies, which happened to be the prequels, especially Revenge of the Sith. But each episode was fun to play, especially as the game offered 2-player co-op on an intuitive split screen, which made it so much more fun because I could play alongside my brother. Whether in the actual missions or in the cantina, we had serious times and fun ones, whether we were hacking loose on Count Dooku or the innocent bystanders of this LEGO world. That was around 17 years ago, and for its time, LEGO Star Wars the video game looked absolutely beautiful. Heck, it even looks good now, especially because you can play it in 4K on Steam. I love LEGO Star Wars, and I was therefore very excited to see that the Skywalker Saga was coming, a new game that features missions from every movie, and even open world zones that would enhance the experience further. But after playing the game and really trying, I'm just left with a disappointment that sadly manages to outweigh much of the awesomeness that's there. But just in case you thought I'm some hater, I'm going to begin this video by telling you about everything I love about this game. And let's get the obvious out of the way first. This game is absolutely gorgeous. From the characters themselves, to the cities or interior environments, all the way to space, LEGO Star Wars really knows what it's doing. I thought that LEGOs looked realistic back in 2005, but it's never been more true than right now. You can see every fine detail in the characters, and even though LEGOs don't actually move as flexibly in real life as they do here, I love how satisfying it looks to see those legs move. There's something about the glow of the lightsabers that just make me want to come back to play. I think Kamino is my favorite area to walk around in, as the lights and details come together so well here. One of my favorite parts of this game is how the developers clearly understand what the fans love about Star Wars characters, and know which characters in particular have meme potential.
You have done well, Lord Vader, and now I sense you wish to continue your search for young Skywalker.
Yes, my master.
This shines through when you control them out in the world, and their idle commentaries in particular, or the ones they make when you change into them, really reflect this knowledge.
For the Republic! For democracy! Sorry, got a little carried away. I've not seen these in the Senate before. I nominate myself to take care of this. I've been voted back in!
Anakin, remember what I taught you.
Yes, Master. Healthy beard is about product and confidence.
We're not paid enough for this. Wait, you're getting paid? This is our union friend.
Hello, what have we here?
I am C-3PO Human-Cyborg Relations.
You truly belong here with us among the clouds.
Well, he seems very friendly.
Yes, very friendly.
This leads in my opinion to the funniest character being Anakin Skywalker, like by far, since the meme community has already embraced many of his legendary lines. Of course we have talked about sand here.
I haven't seen you this worked up before. Was there a lot of sand in your dream?
Yes, a considerable amount, but that's not the point. We just need to get to Mos Espa. I have to make sure my mother is safe.
But it almost comes to the point where Anakin's entire character is played for a fool. In some ways it's just a bit too much, as it essentially makes fun of his entire Darth Vader arc, which doesn't really sit right with me.
What? How can you be on the council and not be a master?
Take a seat, young Skywalker.
The Council wants you to report on all the Chancellor's dealings. We want to know what he's up to.
I understand.
Either way, it's funny every time his personality is exaggerated out in the world.
Why can't I do that?
The same goes for other characters too, especially the likes of Padme and Obi-Wan. But here's the thing. Kamino is a perfect example of how the Skywalker Saga changes everything. One of the main new aspects of this game is that we're no longer tied to just the movie episodes. Now we actually have larger hobby areas we can walk around in, do activities, find secrets and complete missions, and on paper, that sounds like a lot of fun. In fact, I'd say LEGO Star Wars here borrows directly from an arguably much better game ironically, which had open hobby areas like these before LEGO ever did, namely the hidden gem of the Star Wars levels of Disney Infinity 3. let me show you exactly how space battles look in LEGO Star Wars. Pew pew pew, right? It's all quiet between levels. Like whatever, yeah, shooting down enemies is like so-so, I guess. Nothing really to see here. And then comes Disney Infinity. Damn, look at these graphics, look at these ships. So real, and the combat. Anyway, back to it. The Skywalker Saga lets you begin the first episode of each trilogy whenever you want. And it's really nice that we don't actually have to play through every movie in a linear way. However, after playing the first few levels, it's not like I actually want to anymore. Or wanted to, since I've already finished the game. We begin with the all-time objectively best Star Wars movie, Episode 1 The Phantom Menace. To me, this is an iconic part of LEGO Star Wars because it was also the first level of the original game, and I have very fond memories of playing Qui-Gon Jinn along my brother who controlled Obi-Wan. The level is recreated fairly well in the game, but despite the gorgeous visuals, there's just something off here. The actual gameplay part itself, that is the part after the gassing of the meeting room, can be cut down to about 2 minutes if all you do is go for the mission marker. If you're doing the same in the original game, that will likely take you about 4 minutes, and even offer more rooms and secrets, making the level feel much longer. And what happens next? Well, we're put into this weird in-between area where all we're doing is really walking and talking. And that's a big thing in the Skywalker Saga. There's just so much of absolutely boring walking slow and talking to people that has nothing interesting to say. Just check this out. After between 2 and 5 minutes of gameplay depending on how fast you play, there's now a ton of walking, first through the swamp, and then in the Gungan underwater city. The same goes for levels after, where entire levels are just walking and talking, walking from one mission marker to the next. These mission markers are one of my biggest pet peeves in the entire game, because rather than taking you through episodes in a concise and larger chunk manner like in the older games, the Skywalker Saga is chopped off into these tiny piecemeal missions. This mission system continues through every mission and every episode. Some levels are longer than others, for instance the droid factory on Geonosis, which actually takes a while, the first level of Revenge of the Sith, which is my personal favorite of this entire game, and the first level of Empire Strikes Back, but that's because the area is so large. It's a fun twist though, and I'd rather every level was of this length than not. But even my favorite level, the Starship of Episode 3, can be completed in 2 to 3 minutes without any special effort put in. This takes you directly to the boss fight with Count Dooku, after which there is no escape mission down the elevator shaft and the like there is in the superior original game that came out 17 years ago, but which now cuts straight to piloting half a ship, another happy landing, and Coruscant.
Another happy landing.
This is essentially the essence of the Skywalker Saga. It feels so rushed and lacking in fun in terms of stories. There's even a pathetic mission you play as Anakin where you're going to save your mother in Episode 2, but where all you do is march into the Tusken Raider camp, but there's literally nobody there, so all you're doing is walking into another cutscene. Now admittedly, the original LEGO Star Wars game did not even feature this scene, likely because it wasn't suited for young kids. Whether this choice was appropriate or not is up for debate, but seeing as the Skywalker Saga excludes so many other scenes and events, it wouldn't be strange to cut this one out too, as it feels rather jarring to think about any sort of depiction of Anakin's mother in a comedy Star Wars game. My favorite individual levels in this game are levels where you can play around without worrying about a boss fight, but sadly, there are very few of those. The 2 to 5 minute levels of the separate ships in both Episode 1 and 3 are examples of these, but they're just so few and too short to be enjoyed to the fullest. And before we get confused here, yes, the Skywalker Saga is in fact longer than the original game, largely because it houses all 9 movies, and because of its more open areas where you can do stuff like destroying LEGO objects and finding treasures. And this leads us back to these open areas, because they seem to mean so much to this game, despite being mostly bland. But let's talk about the best things first. Kamino. As I mentioned earlier, Kamino is my favorite open area because it really feels like it takes full advantage of both the visuals and the LEGO Star Wars high points. Kamino is surprisingly large, sporting many corridors that, despite their sameness, feel immersive because this is just how you remember them from the movies and other games. It's just cozy to walk among the clone troopers here, complete a few missions, and venture outside, where those darker visuals really come together with the rain and the light sources. I like Kamino then, partially because it's so full of that visual personality. But that's where it kinda stops, to be honest. You see, destroying LEGO objects and completing simple missions only maintain the fun for so long, and once we've been here for a few minutes or half hours, it kind of just doesn't give me anything anymore. The same is true for every other hub area, only these other places are just plain boring. I just can't believe how simple and generic Tatooine is portrayed, or the similar places in the later movies, such as, again, Tatooine. But perhaps Coruscant is my biggest disappointment, as I feel like so much could be done here. But instead, the awesome licensed music has been replaced by some generic annoying theme. You need to make use of these taxis to really get anywhere, and I don't find the environments particularly interesting anyway. But perhaps the worst part are the side missions and the UI, which I'm going to deal with together. The Skywalker Saga offers a ton of side missions in its open hub areas, and in this sense joins in with every other open world game out there. The only difference from many other open world games is that near 100% of LEGO Star Wars missions are absolutely dog shit, and I mean the blandest of the bland. Now maybe I shouldn't expect much more from a LEGO game than having to track down a pirate taxi and then beat up the criminals, but I just find quests like these so boring, and when this is the deepest missions get, there's not much more to say. The experience gets hampered further by the fact that the UI is so utterly cluttered by a massive amount of different menus and windows, which often don't even follow best practice standards for maneuvering, meaning that if I go on the local map and want to return to the game, clicking the bat button does in fact not return me to the game, but moves the map to different levels, which is just not intuitive at all. In addition, finding where to go to complete missions is harder than it should be as well, as completing missions in the game is almost only possible if you enable help, which not only points you in the right direction, but also forces you to have this constant marking on the ground everywhere you go. It's infuriating, and I keep wondering if I'm doing something wrong, when in fact I really don't think I am. Wondering where to go in a world as simple as this should not even be a thing, even when the baby markers are disabled. No, instead of side missions and clunky menus, the open world of LEGO Star Wars is at its very best when you explore for yourself and encounter hidden treasures on the way. It's so much more fun to encounter a hidden area you haven't had to enable a quest before you can find, or just come across a puzzle you manage to solve while running about. And I guess this brings us to the final aspect of the Skywalker Saga, the updated combat. The original LEGO games had this combat system that was simple, yet fun. You mashed a button to fight, but could also combine it with jumping to perform different attacks. It was simple, some might say too simple, but it worked just fine. And now you might expect me to say something bad about the latest combat innovations, but actually, I really like them. We can now combine various buttons to perform slightly different moves, and it's important to change up the attacks if your opponent suddenly begins blocking, for example. The combat looks stylish and fun then, and I actually think they managed to make a system that supersedes the former in every way here, which is a good thing indeed. However, it's not perfect, and if there's one thing LEGO Star Wars could have done much better, it's improving the lightsaber versus lightsaber combat. Because as things stand right now, it's rather unpredictable in a bad way when fighting a Sith boss fight, for example, and not really knowing whether your attacks will just leave you open to hits or not. Indeed, the boss fights might actually be one of the worst things about this game, as there are really no stakes, nor a way to effectively fight as technically or Jedi-like as you want, as in blocking, attacking, and counterattacking in a calculated way. When you factor in the enormous amount of quick-time events that are just forced upon you again and again, boss fights really don't portray LEGO Star Wars from its best sides. Lastly, the level system feels subpar, relying much more on incremental percentage upgrades than actually teaching you new and useful skills, which would have helped make the game much better as you go. LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is perhaps ironically one of the best LEGO Star Wars games out there, especially if you're new to the series. It offers by far the best visuals, the best combat, the funniest characters.
Welcome, young Jedi. I trust your Padawan is behaving himself. Hey!
We'll take him together. You go in slowly on the left.
I'm taking you. No, Anakin, no!
The most characters, and the entire movie series, offering a game chock full of content. But despite this, it's also my personal biggest LEGO Star Wars disappointment, as it fails so hard in depicting the movies in a revolutionary new way, with cool areas, longer missions, and exciting boss fights. I think part of this disappointment stems from the fact that, as the LEGO games adds voice acting, I expect them to take the movies more seriously as well maybe, at least on some level. Like for example in offering interesting side characters or missions, or even longer cutscenes. I also find the humor to be very hit or miss. It's at its worst when it tries to mimic the movies, but makes the best jokes when it parodies them instead, like the exaggerated feelings and remarks of Anakin.
I sense a great deal of confusion in you, young Skywalker. Wait in the council chambers until we return.
Yes, Master.
The worst part is that the open world is so boring and devoid of enthusiasm, unless you specifically go looking for it yourself, and stumble across hidden treasures here and there. As such, even though it's fun to control its characters and explore a few of its environments, LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga ends up a massive waste of potential, and if I could recommend you do anything, I would advise you to play the original game instead, which somehow offers better and more fun missions in a somewhat smaller, yet much more charming and cheaper package.
What are you doing out here?
I was so worried about you. Obi-Wan said you had turned to the dark side?
Thank you so much for watching. The Skywalker Saga sadly really disappointed me, and even though I'm a sucker for lightsabers and awesome graphics, there's very little in this game that makes me want to come back to it. Let me know how you feel about this latest and perhaps last LEGO Star Wars game, and if you enjoyed the video, I really hope you leave a like, and if you want to support the channel further, it means a lot if you consider becoming a channel member or a patron, as every donation means the world to me. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time, and may the cheers be with you.